Hello, welcome to TheAIbumMan. Today we're going to be taking a look at some of the vinyl records which I've picked up myself over the last couple of years and things while I've been away from YouTube. It's been quite a long time since I've done any sort of vinyl pickup video, so I thought there's no new albums coming out this week or anything, so yeah, why not show off some of the vinyl records I've picked up over the last couple of years. We've got some stuff from the 60s, from the 70s, some rare 80s metal, all sorts here. So yeah, let's get into it and let's start from the 1960s. So the first one from the 60s we got is the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds. Now this is also on mono vinyl as well, and it's got all these kind of fun annotations from the last person who owned it, which is kind of cool. They say just really random stuff like Pet Sounds dog woof woof. And all sorts. This was not an expensive copy of Pet Sounds. To be honest, I picked this up at a ridiculously cheap price. I don't think I paid more than £5 for it, which for Pet Sounds on mono is a really, really good price. And what an album it is. It's been my favourite Beach Boys album for a really long time. I mean, most people's favourite Beach Boys album, isn't it? Sloop John B. God Only Knows especially, is just a masterclass in songwriting. If you want to learn how to write like a great pop song, just listen to God Only Knows, because Brian Wilson is just a genius with that. And the whole album it's just terrific. And it sounds, I do prefer it on mono. I think the stereo mix is alright. It's better than, I don't know, say, some of the early Beatles ones, like the Sgt. Pepper stereo mix is generally trash, though the newer remix isn't too bad. But on mono, it's how it was meant to sound, and it sounds brilliant. Okay, so next up we actually have some Beatles, the Magical Mystery Tour EP. Now this is presented on two 45 plain single discs, one at the front and one at the back, so it's double EP. And what's really cool about this version is that the EP comes to either in black and white photos or in colour, and this is the 4-colour version. It's got a comic, as you can see here, of the Magical Mystery Tour story from the movie, and also images from the movie as well on the side. It's really, really fun to look through, to be honest. The comic is very entertaining. The movie's really strange. I mean, if you haven't seen the movie, I hesitate to recommend it. Maybe if you're a real Beatles completionist, but then you've probably already seen it by now anyway. It's super trippy, super psychedelic, really avant-garde filmmaking. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's quite a fun listen. I mean, I love the soundtrack to it. And I love the songs on here. Flying, Blue Jay Away, and of course I Am the Walrus, which I think is an absolute masterpiece. To me, a lot of the stuff that was done on the Magical Mystery EP kind of represents, it's like the full culmination of what they were doing on Sgt. Pepper. I mean, Sgt. Pepper is the stronger album, don't get me wrong, and things like A Day in the Life is probably the best Beatles song, but I feel there are a number of songs on there that, you know, well, they were bordering on psychedelia. Here they go full on with the psychedelia, and to me it just works. I really love this album. It's such a cool addition to have. Okay, so up next we have another side of Bob Dylan, and this is also on mono on the original CBS label. I'm pretty sure it's an original UK pressing of it by the research I've done into it. And it's quite an interesting album, Bob's. It really is a transitional album. So this comes after the likes of Freewheelin', The Times They Are A-Changin', after the kind of the classic folk acoustic era. But it becomes before the Electric trilogy, Bringing It All Back Home, Highway 61 and Blonde on Blonde. And it's a transition in terms of that you can see that Bob's, I guess, kind of starting to lose interest in the more traditional folk music. You don't get as many like short little things as like Don't Think Twice, It's Alright, or Blowing in the Wind, or The Times They Are A-Changin'. There's some weird experimental songs on here. You got stuff like, I mean, Ballad in Plain D, it's really long, kind of a love song. A lot of this is about his breakup with Susie Rotolo, the girl from the Freewheelin' cover. But there is some really strange stuff on here. Motorcycle Nightmare is a really strange kind of dream-like thing, but then it's got some masterpieces. It's got It Ain't Me Babe, though I think the live version from his Rolling Thunder Revue tour in 1974 is probably the superior version. Chimes of Freedom is a brilliant song as well, a bit more political, probably the only political song really on here. It's generally about love and loss and breakup, and it's probably my, well, I mean, I guess his first album is my least favourite of the acoustic album, because the first album is bluesy folk, and it's fairly standard. But this, it's never one I go to half as much as The Times They Are A-Changin, which I reviewed quite recently and said about how much I love it, or Freewheelin', but it's certainly an awesome addition to have to the collection. Okay, let's go into a couple of newer releases. I don't buy that much in terms of new releases on vinyl, to be honest. I don't find it makes a massive difference, but there's some stuff that I'll make an exception for, either because it's super cheap or because it's super cool. The first is an example of being super cool. Bowie's Black Star. This was in my top 100 albums of last decade. I think it was in the top 40. It definitely deserves to be there. This is the gatefold, all in black. Got a nice starry night and a picture of Bowie there. And a very hard to read track listing. I don't know if you can even see that on here because it's black font on black. But I love the design for this, to be honest. It's really gorgeous. And apparently there's a few special features with this, which I haven't actually checked out. Like, I could swear it had something to do with, like, if you hold it in front of the moon light or something, then it glows like a blue or something like that. I know there's a few kind of hidden Easter eggs in this, which I've really got to delve into. It's got a lovely booklet as well. Let's see if we can get that out. Yeah, we've got the picture of Bowie from the Lazarus music video. And then you've got black lyrics on black. I don't know if you can see that. It's very difficult to read. It's not exactly practical listening, and it's got the full credits again in black. I guess it's kind of cool. You could say it's a little bit pretentious and artsy, but it's a beautiful, beautiful album. If you like jazz and you like Bowie, I mean, how have you not heard this by now? It's a masterpiece. It's brilliant. So next up on the newest stuff is one that I picked up because it was cheap. Legend of the Seagull Men. So I hadn't heard this album before actually picking it up, but it was on sale somewhere for like 3-4 quid, which for 180 gram, you know, gatefold thing, and it's got, I think, is it a poster it's got with it? It's either a poster or booklet, let's see. Yeah, it's got this full poster to it. Let's see if we can get that out. Oh, it's actually massive, yeah. So it's got this full poster of the guys on it as well, which, yeah, for like 4 quid, I mean, it was hard to turn down. It's an album that I wanted to hear, because I should probably explain who these guys are. So these guys are a supergroup consisting of Danny Carey of Tool on drums, David Dreyer, who I don't know who that is, Brent Hines from Mastodon on guitar, and to be honest, I don't know the other people. Jimmy Hayward on guitars, Pete Griffin on bass, Chris DiGiovanni on synth and piano, and Dom Lewis on cello, piano, and orchestration. So yeah, it's kind of a strange one. I remember kind of panicking when I looked at the back and I saw David Dreyer, and I, for a second, thought, oh my god, this isn't David Drayman of Disturbed. And no, luckily, no relation, completely different names, or they're similar-ish, but yeah. Vocally, they're quite different. How to describe this? I guess it's a bit like sludgy kind of Mastodon-y kind of stuff, but with a real pirate and sea thing. Almost every song is about the sea. I think every song is about the sea, with titles like Shipswreck, The Orca, Legend of the Seagull Men, We Are the Seagull Men, Ballads of the Deep Sea Diver. And as a result, it has almost a kind of a piratey thing to it. I mean, it's not Hailstorm, it's not like full pirate metal, but it's a kind of a sea shanty piratey thing. It's interesting. It is interesting. It's a little bit different, but it hasn't really grabbed me. I have to give it a second listen, to be honest. I've only given it the one, but it hasn't really grabbed me yet. Okay, next up, some classic 80s metal. Let's get into it with the rarest record I maybe own in my entire collection. This one is so cool. So, Morbid Angels, Altars of Madness. Now, in of itself, this is not an album you see very often. It's quite a pricey one. But what makes this especially rare is the fact that, and this is going to look like I'm breaking it, but it opens out like that. Now, you might think, oh, well, is the sleeve just broken? Is this a severely damaged copy? No, because this is an original promo copy. So the labels for it are, if we can get it to show you, are completely white. Completely blank labels. Now, normally the versions of this have, I think it's the artwork of this artwork in the middle. But no, completely blank. Nothing on it. And then, coming with it, we got these 2 pieces of paper, which from some research look to be authentic and not just random printouts. But yeah, so as you can see, these are promo copies which were sent out around the time of release, and they have the little press pack with them. Let's see. Said E-Rate continue their head-storming 1989 release schedule, the debut album from leading underground death metal rockers Morbid Angel. Or they actually spelt it Angle there, Morbid Angle. Maybe there was a name change at the last minute. They went from Morbid Angle to Morbid Angel. I definitely prefer Morbid Angel. But yeah, so I cannot even find out how much this is worth. I mean, I don't want to sell it. I love this. It's a brilliant album. It's one of the best classic death metal albums ever, and it's so wonderful to hear on vinyl. But I'm quite interested if anyone actually knows anything about the history of this or the promo, or I can't seem to find any evidence of this ever even having been sold. So I'm going to assume it's pretty rare and maybe valuable. Who knows? So there's my pension sorted. So that's good. Okay, this one's kind of a fun one. Jet City Woman, Queensryche on a picture disc of the logo. That's really cool. I think I got this for like £2, and that's brilliant. I mean, it's so cool. It's my favourite Queensryche song, and yeah, can't beat that. This is an album that I don't know how I haven't got for so long. So if you've watched my channel for a while, you might know that I'm a massive Ronnie James Dio fan. In fact, my kind of whole outro thing of long live rock and roll, which I end every video with, is taken from the Rainbow album of the same name, one of my favourite albums of all time. So how it took me so long, I only got this a couple of months ago. Dio's Holy Diver. This is an album that's eluded me forever on vinyl. I don't know why. It's not like it's the rarest album, it's just, I don't know, it's certainly not the most common. It's never one that I found at a reasonable price, but I picked this up at a record fair in London, I think, maybe? I can't even remember where I got this, actually, but it was pretty recent, before lockdown and all that, definitely. And yeah, I'm so happy to have this. This is one of my favourite metal albums of all time. You got Holy Diver, you got Don't Talk to Strangers, Rainbow in the Dark. I mean, every single song on here is an absolute banger, and it's just one of the best metal albums ever. End of. Speaking of other great metal albums, the final metal album we got here is Slayer South of Heaven. And yeah, this is one I picked up in the same place that I got the Morbid Angel record as well. The shop had got in a supply of metal records, and as soon as I saw that they posted about that on their Facebook page, I was straight down there. And I picked up some other ones as well. Maybe we'll show some of those in another video. Let's see if people like this one, eh? Plenty more I've picked up over these last couple of years than just the ones I'm showing here. This South of Heaven is maybe at this point actually my favourite Slayer record. For a long time my favourite Slayer record was Rain in Blood. I mean, it's classic, it's just pure, fast, in your face, thrash, Angel of Death, Rain in Blood, great. But nowadays I tend to prefer the slightly slower side of Slayer. I mean, this is not exactly like some slow, you know, album, but it has a bit more atmosphere to it. They seem to take a bit more time with their songwriting. It's not just about pure aggression and almost like punkish like thrash. These are really well crafted songs. The title track, Mandatory Suicide, Dissident Aggressor. It's a really great album. And look at Jeff Hanneman's hair. Oh, it's great. Rest in peace, Jeff. Right, let's get into the 70s. I guess we'll start off the 70s with the album I picked up actually the most recently. This is Journey's Escape, and got this for, as you can see, £3 which I don't think is too bad for Journey's Escape. I mean, does anyone not know this album? It's got Don't Stop Believing. I mean, everyone must know this, even if you just know it from Glee. Hopefully you don't just know it from Glee if you're watching this channel. That would be a surprise, though. No offence if you do. I mean, I've never seen Glee, but anyway, what a weird tangent. It's a great album. Somehow, if you haven't heard this, there's more to it than just Don't Stop Believing. Don't think The Journey are all just Don't Stop Believing. Mother Father is a fantastic song. And for me, this is probably the greatest AOR album of all time. I mean, other contenders, I don't know, Foreigners 4, that's a pretty good album. But I don't know, none of them are as consistent as this. It's just a masterpiece. It's great. Next up, we have one that I was so happy to get. I picked this up when I was in Edinburgh last year. I think, yeah, around the time of Fringe Festival in August. And this is George Harrison's All Things Must Pass. And to me, this looks like an original copy from looking at the labels and things. I'll try and very carefully open it up, but it is quite fragile. It's a bit taped up, this one, so I can show you the inner sleeves if you haven't seen them. Because we've got things like this wonderful picture of apple jam for the fun. So this is a triple album. It's quite a rare triple album. You don't get too many of those, and often for good reason, because filling a double album is often hard enough, let alone filling up a triple album. But George Harrison had been, well, he'd been storing up a lot of songs for the Beatles. The Beatles had rejected a ton of his material. And, I mean, I reviewed the Beatles' discography quite a long time ago. I bet those videos have aged quite a bit now. But hey, if you want to go back and see them, be my guest. And I rated Abbey Road as my favourite Beatles album. And for me, the thing that I love about Abbey Road the most is George's contributions. You've got Something, Here Comes the Sun, and he just, towards the end of the Beatles, became, I think, their best songwriter. So we've been saving a lot of songs up. So then we have this triple disc. We've got brilliant stuff like My Sweet Lord, his cover of Bob Dylan's If Not For You. Really underrated Dylan song from New Morning as well, but the Harrison version is better. Behind That Locked Door. Then you've got the second disc, which has I Dig Love, the Beware of Darkness. I mean, what a tune. All Things Must Pass, the title track. And then finally, the Apple Jam side, which has I Remember Jeep, which has Ginger Baker on drums, Eric Clapton, Billy Preston. And then you've also got Thanks for the Pepperoni, which is, this one has some really strange stuff. It's Johnny's Birthday, the 55-second birthday track. Very odd side. This is probably my least favourite part of it, but this is an album I really want to review soon, so I guess I shouldn't say too much more about it. I'm going to be doing an in-depth analysis of this record quite soon. One of my favourites. Wonderful to have this copy. And yeah, it wasn't too expensive, only £15, which I think is pretty good. It's a little on the slightly battered side, but very playable. Sounds great. Okay, next up, we got Man. Man's, what's this? Maximum Darkness. This is Man's live album. These guys are from Wales, from the 70s, kind of a jam band. For some reason, I had it in my mind that these guys then went on to form Manfred Mann. They didn't. It's completely unrelated, just two bands which happen to have Man in. So there you go, in case you are similarly confused like me. But anyway, if you haven't heard this as a live album, really do yourself a favour. This is one of the great live albums. I know I've been saying a lot of these, and this is one of the great, but well, I mean, there's a reason I buy these albums, is because I love them. I'm not going to buy albums I hate, though. I mean, I do own Emerson, Lake and Palmer's Love Beach, so go figure. But yeah, it's quite short. I mean, it's not a double live or anything. We're just talking one disc. But every single track is just basically perfect on it. What's my favourite one? It's, let's have a look, Codeine. Yeah, Codeine. If you want to really get what Man are about as a kind of a British jam band, Codeine is really the song to hear from it. Stunning. I was so surprised when I heard this. I didn't know what to expect going into it. And as you can see, I got this for 99p. 99p. I mean, God, you definitely can't get better for 99p. It sounds brilliant on vinyl. Let's move on to another classic live album, The Grateful Dead's Live Dead album. At least I think that's what it's called. God, I can't remember. But anyway, this is The Grateful Dead's classic live album. Grateful Dead were a band for a long time I'd never really given a chance to be honest. I don't know what it was. They never quite had the influence in the UK as they did in the US. In the US, they really got into the whole pop culture, and they do seem a bit of a part of the collective consciousness in American music. In Britain, I don't know. I mean, hey, older people out there, tell me what about your experiences with the Grateful Dead in the UK. I'd love to know, did they really ever play in the UK? I can't say I know much about if they were even popular in the UK. But, so I don't know, they were one of those bands I just never really given a listen to. And then I decided to, I think it was a year or two ago now, I decided I was just going to go through their discography from the beginning. And while I did enjoy some of their studio stuff up to like American Beauty, the whole country Grateful Dead really doesn't appeal to me, but I liked the more psychedelic and jammy 70s rock kind of stuff. And Live Dead, that was the album that stuck with me the most. I just couldn't stop listening to this. Dark Star, Saint Stephen. I love long jam songs, and I guess few bands do it better than Jerry Garcia and co. It does have some strange stuff. We've got, I think it's And We Bid You Goodnight, which is the one which is like just a feedback loop at the end, and it's basically just feedback, and it's a bit like Lou Reed's Metal Machine music, and it does go on a bit long. For an album that only has 6 songs, having some of it taken up by feedback isn't great. But this is where I'd recommend you start with the Grateful Dead anyway, unless you're really into country music, then hey, maybe American Beauty you should start with. A lot of people seem to love that album. I just don't get it. I really just don't get it. But Live Dead, I do get. I'm so happy to have. Okay, next up, something a bit weird and something I really didn't think I'd ever. And this is technically 180 gram repressing, because God knows if you could ever get hold of the original. This is Fantasia, and this is their album entitled... it's entitled Fantasia, but brilliantly the repressing has just put this on it. If you can see, let's see if we can get that in focus. Maybe not, maybe... No. Oh, there we go. Yeah. So it just says Fantasia Same after it. I'm pretty sure this album's not called Same. I think it's the same as the name. That's great. So who are Fantasia, you might be wondering? Well, Fantasia are a Finnish progressive rock band. Look at these wonderful Finnish titles we got here. A Finnish prog band. And Finnish prog was something I started really getting into a couple of years ago, and it's definitely something I'm going to be making a video on at some point. I don't know when, but I really want to make a video going into the 70s Finnish prog scene. Because you might not expect Finland to produce such good prog in the 70s, but it actually did. The most famous Finnish prog band, which you may have heard of, is Wigwam, but there's many great Finnish prog bands out there, and Fantasia's debut, and pretty much only album, is definitely one of the best of Finnish prog. So if you want some weird but really good prog, hey, check out Fantasia. It's a great record, and there were only like 200 of these made when they decided to reissue it because, I mean, obscure Finnish prog band. And somehow I found this in a record shop in, not a record shop, a record fair in London, and they had like 5 copies of it. I don't think many other people can buy them, but I sure as hell did. Right, finally, another one that I got from a record fair in London actually. Cosmo's Factory by Creedence Clearwater Revival. I had specifically been looking for this album for a while. I've been getting heavy into Creedence. I just love John Fogerty and Creedence. It's wonderful. And Cosmo's Factory is their best album. You got Ramble Tamble, Run Through the Jungle, and of course, Who Will Stop the Rain? Oh, and I Heard It Through the Grapevine. The full 11-minute version of I Heard It Through the Grapevine. Up Around the Bend. I mean, every song on here is just brilliant. I'm never quite sure how to categorize these. Are they Americana they're categorized as, maybe? I mean, they almost have a little bit of country in, but yeah, it doesn't sound country. A little bit of folk, but it's not really folk. Classic rock, but it's not really classic rock. I don't know, it's just good old Americana. Maybe most similar to like the band or things, but I'm sure everyone knows who CCR are. You know, pretty popular band. But Cosmo's Factory, what an album. So yeah, that ends it for some vinyl records, which I bought recently. I mean, it wasn't that recent. Some of these I bought a couple of years ago. But hey, there's plenty more records which I bought, so, you know, if you want to see more of this series, let me know. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and just as a side thing, thank you so much for watching since my return. I returned back in April, and I've got such a wonderful reception coming back onto the platform. I really wasn't expecting so many people to actually care that I hadn't been making videos for a while, so it felt really nice. And yeah, hopefully going to be keeping videos rolling out on a roughly weekly basis. I'm trying to stick to a weekly schedule. I've missed a couple of weeks here and there, but, you know, life does get in the way. But yeah, so before I ramble on too much, this has been TheAIbumMan. Thanks so much for watching, and long live rock and roll.